So debugging a Mule application, Anypoint Studio. So as a yesterday session, as I said, in your studio, your IDE is not only notepad like writing the code, compile and run, it will support some XX features. So in that one of the X is your debugging. So Anypoint Studio Visual Debugger allows you to run your application in a debug mode. So what happens if you run your application in the debug mode? You can add breakpoints to the processors and step through the application. So what happens in debug mode? Your application stops its execution and when the debug point encounters. So it means if you want to see what exactly happening when you do set payload or when you do logger, how do we see? We cannot stop the application to see it, right? So in that place, debugger will help you to pause your application. I think it's not the right word, stop. So I can make it as pause. Pause means just a small break. So it pauses its execution when a debug pointer encounters. So first start your application in the debug mode, and wherever you want to pause the execution, and there you can add a debugger point, and then there you can identify what are the values you have received and what are the values you have set and what are your values you are going to send it to the external systems or returning to the browser. That values you can see in the debugger mode. So we can watch the event properties and values and some other points that we'll see. So by default your debugger listeners incoming TCP connections on the port 6666. It's not an relevant point to us. So by default, it will done. We don't need to do anything. If you want to know more information about Visual Debugger, guys can go here and get the information, more information about the debugger. So whenever I send a link, do save in a notepad. Once a WhatsApp group is created, I'll create a WhatsApp group like this for every batch. There I will post the messages. So once a group is created, I will share these links in that group so that it will be there for a quite bit of time. So next thing is going to the debugger. So debugger concepts. So now this was with the Studio 7.5 version. If you want, you can change this to 7.6. So this may continuously change from now and then. So 7.6 version, and it will give you the information about more information about your debugging concepts. Okay, and then running a project in the debugger mode. So to run a project in the debugger mode, um, again go to the same link as like your first applications. So to run debug mode. No, this is not working. 5 only will work. Running in debug mode. Visual Debugger, Studio Debugging. For version to version, they'll change the documentation. Debug project in the studio. So already they have given the steps here. So right click on your project, package explorer view, and then select debug as a Mule application. Studio asks you the permission to switch Mule debugger perspective. So that way we'll see. So to run the debugger, what we will do is go to your studio, Anypoint Studio, and then right click, and there is an option to debug. So your application will start in the debug mode. Internally, it may use some ports called 6666. So we no need to worry about it. It will automatically taken care. So this is about debugging a Mule application. So what is this? Confirm perspective switch. What is perspective here? Let me click on S and let's see what will happen. See, your entire views got rearranged. So there are perspectives in your IDE. So here are the perspectives. So each perspective has a purpose. What is that purpose? When you are designing an application, all these perspectives are arranged in a way that it is suitable for design. So what kind of view size or view place you need, um, you need to design to happily design your application. Your views are arranged in such a way for the design perspective. So all views are arranged for in particular way for address some problem or for address something like design debug modes. So your views are all tied together to a perspective. So that is called a perspective. If you want to open a perspective, click on this plus button here on the top right hand side corner and click on that. It will go there. So Mule design is the default perspective. It will open when you open your studio. And you click on debug, it will open you the debugger. So all your views are arranged in a different way which supports for the debugger. Okay, the top you will have a debugger. Top you will have a debugger, and then you'll have a console here. You will have some kind of evaluate, breakpoints, mule palettes, something is here. So we'll see how this will help the debugger. If you want to switch the perspectives, option 1, click on this and choose the respective perspective. We all will tie to Mule design and Mule debug, so you don't need to worry about the other things. Okay, so either you can switch from design to debug or debug to design. When you start your application, if you are in a design perspective, your studio will ask to switch into the debug perspective. When you switch here, it will come here. So if you already a perspective is opened, a perspective is opened, you can switch to that perspective by click on this open perspective and then click on this button, click on open, you will move to that. So once the perspectives all are opened, what you will do is you can click here to switch them as well. Okay, so that they will automatically open. Now we are in the debugger perspective. Now your application is started. Now let me send my request to it. So I am sending the request to it, but I am expecting that the application will stop at some point too. It will take a pause at some point, but it's not paused. It completely executed as like run. So when you want to pass your application, you should do one thing. You should tell to the debugger where it want to pass. Then only it will pass. Otherwise, if you don't show any symbol to pass, it will not pass. So it's something like when you are going on a main road, you will have a traffic signal, right? It means that you have to, it will show you a red color to take a pass and when you are driving. So something like that, to you should show some kind of card here that is called a breakpoint. Right click on the event processor and then add breakpoint to add a breakpoint. And if you want to remove a breakpoint, you can remove it, so it will completely removed. Or if you want to disable for some particular amount of time, you can click on this disable breakpoint. Okay, so remove the breakpoint. So it is a first status. So to add a breakpoint, add it. Now your application will stop here whenever, pause here whenever you get a new request. So go to browser and send the request, and then your application paused here. And now observe there is a blue color square rectangle kinds of blue dashed rectangular was there. It means that your application is paused here. By the time my application is executing, it has many things, starting with the name of the event processor that is currently going to execute, and then something called attributes, and something called correlation ID, something called payload, something called variables that we are going to see. And now console, clear the things, and then if you want to, so you have paused here, you should tell that, hey, okay, done, just move to the next step. How do you tell that? So on the top of your debugger, there is something like an arrow which shows you like a stepping symbol from here to here. So that is next processor. So when you click on this, it will move to the next processor. It will execute. What will happen after it executes? As it's a logger, it will print a message in the console. See here, a message got printed. Flow started, request received. Now the next processor that is going to execute is set payload. Now check the set payload. There is something called payload here, which these names are both are relevant names. Let's see what happened when set payload is executed. Will there any change here or not? So set payload. Okay, so when I do set payload, something called payload is here that is storing the value that I have given, right? And then next set payload, I'm updating, I'm again assigning something. What will happen? So when assign a set payload, so again what will happen? So both are same event processors. I use it two times. What is the way it has used in the what is the way first it was executed here, in the same way it will also get executed. So expecting is that my payload value will get overridden, or it may throw an error saying that, hey, I already holded something. So either one of the thing may happen. Let's see what will happen. So it will override your set payload. So set payload is something like there is something called payload. So in that payload, you are setting the value to that. So that is the value you are passing. Whatever the value you are passing, that value will go and store in the set payload. And the next one and the last one is the logger. So once the logger is done, so identify what is the value in the set payload. Hi, welcome to Mulesoft again. So I'm taking a screen capture to see at the end of the process. And then the last one is, with this my flow execution completes. And what will happen is after executing, whatever the value is available in my payload, that will get returned to my browser. Okay. So anyone has any question? I got a sound. Okay.
Yes, sir.
No
I
questions.
have a doubt. Sir,
Okay, you
I
unmuted
didn't
yourself.
understand the set payload, sir. Just can you explain again about the set payload, sir?
Set payload is something like just you are setting value to the payload. Payload is something I don't know, kind of thing like a variable here
Hmm.
which stores something. You are setting something to that. You are assigning something to store it.
Okay. And
Okay. The,
you told about if you want to start the process. Actually, you told me to stop the process. If you want to again start the process, you told to arrow some click the arrow button. Now after that, what you have to do, sir?
no, it's something like you stopped the processor here, right?
Okay.
Say so it's something like when you are going on a highway, if you see a red light, you will stop. Then when you will start again, when you
Um.
see a
uh,
green light,
yeah. Okay.
there is some kind of instruction we will get to move to the next. So in
Hmm.
the same way, when you stopped here to move
Hmm.
to the next, you will use this. You should follow my this guy mouse. So this is the next processor. That is what I'm clicking. So it was moving from here to here. So I will show it again, don't worry. So what I was explaining here is, so set payload value was set to the payload, value was stored to the payload. When I execute, when my process completes, whatever the value exists in the my payload, that will get returned. So my process completed, logger got executed, and it printed a message, and then a message is returned back to the browser. Okay, so if you want, I will close this and open this again in a different window. So
Set payload only respond to the request.
it's not responding to the request. Set
Okay.
payload is a component. What logger is doing here? So I sent a request again. Now my process stopped here. Now I observed, okay, there is nothing in the payload, there is nothing in the vars, right? So I
Yes.
observed there is nothing here and here. And now, okay, now go to the next step. I should tell my program to go to the next step. How do I set that? Here is the place where you click on this button, next processor. So the current processor will execute, your dotted line will move to the next one. It means now your control is here. So first line executed, second line. Sorry, first event processor is executed and it moved to the second event processor. Okay, so now here you are. So your debugger, it will show you where is your current control now. That is what it will show you. Okay, and this was the message it will printed for your logger. So now set payload is something which is used to set some value into the payload. Think like there is something called payload. Inside that you are setting some value. Okay, what is that value that you are providing here? Okay, that will set here, and then again I'm using another set payload, so it will override the existing value. So I'm clicking on again next, so it will move, and then logger, it will print the log message, and then it will leave the flow and your browser will receive the message. So this is how we will debug our application. So when you are learning the things, don't run and see. Every time when you are run your application, you should run in debug mode and see what is happening at each and every event processor.